Hello and welcome to another video about Python. So in this video we are going to talk about lists and tuples, for loops, if statements. I'm going to briefly go over what a module is and how to use one, just because we will be using a module in our challenge which is to create a password generator. So I'm now going to start with lists and tuples. So a list is basically a way to store multiple values within one variable. So for example, if you remember in the last video we had, let's say, a variable that was friends names. We had that equal to Jack. So that's just a simple variable. So all we are doing is we are associating the variable name friends names with the value of Jack. So whenever we call it at any point in the program, if we call friends names, and then it knows, Python will know that we actually want to show the word Jack. So with a list, if I have more than one friend, so if I have more than just Jack, I can make a list. So a list will always use square brackets. And then inside this list, we can put as many strings as we like. So we can use strings. You can also put integers. You can also do floats. You can also put in true or false. So you can put booleans in. But I'm going to stick with strings. So let's just write some names in. Okay, so now if I just print this list, as you can see, it actually prints out all the names that are inside this list. Now what I can also do is I can call one of these, so I don't have to list every single name or every single item inside the list. So I can do that by coming down to where it says print, and after I've called the list name, so the variable name, I can use my square brackets again, and inside I can just put a number. So remember, this starts at 0, so I've called number 1 inside friends names. So number 1 is actually John because it starts at 0. So Jack is classed as 0, John is 1, Tony is 2, and then Bill is 3. So now if I print that, it will show John, this one. If I do 0, then it's going to show Jack. If I do 2, it's going to show Tony. Now, what I can also do is I can use -1. So if I do -1, it will actually grab the last value. If I do -2, it's going to grab the second to last, and so on. So if you have a massive list, you can, and you want to grab something near the end of the list, you can use this method instead of sitting there and trying to count all the way through. So another thing that we can do, for example, we can use the F string again, like we learnt before, and we can say my friend's name is, let's say we just wanted 1, so let's say friend's name, let's say Tony, so 0, 1, so we know it's number 2. And then we're going to use the title as well, because as you can see here, I put it with a small t, a lowercase t. If I print that, and it will show down here, my friend's name is Tony with a capital T. So all we're doing is we are associating these values here to the list name friends names, and when we print it, just like it did before with the variables, we are calling this variable here, but if we didn't state the number, then we will just get an error. Let me get rid of that. It will list every single name. Okay, so you can just select a certain one by using the square brackets after you enter the name of the variable. There you are. So we can also slice a list. Now if, for example, we wanted, so we got Jack, John, Tony, Bill. So if we wanted to just list Jack and John, we could do print f. Actually, we don't need f for this one. So friend's name, open and close the square brackets. You can put a colon, and we can say, so that is 0 and that's 1. So 2. We can do that and it will just select Jack and John. Now if I move this to 3, then it will do the first 3. So you can think of this as being 0. So you can think of that as 0. And then, so this is the start where it's going to grab and where it's going to finish. Now we can also do it to the other way around. So if we say 2, then it's only going to show the last 2. So it's going to show Tony and Bill, as you can see down here. If I wanted to do 2 and 4, you can see it will just show Tony and Bill. So if I wanted to add to the list, so if I just do print friends names, so that will just print all the names in the list at the moment. What I could do is I can do friends names dot append, open close parenthesis, and inside here I can put another name. So let's say I want to put Jill. Now if I print the list again now after I have just appended the name Jill, so you can see this first one here is this first print statement. So it's just printing the contents of the list friends names. Then down here I've appended, so I've added on the name Jill, and when you use append it adds it onto the end, and I've printed it again, which shows the result of adding Jill on. So you can do this as many times as you like. I can do another one, friends names dot append Marie, and you can see it adds Jill and it adds Marie. So what I can also do is I will keep that as it is. I'll get rid of this. Actually, no, I'll keep that. So what I can also do is I can change one of these names. So let's say, for example, we have Jack who decides he wants to change his name. So what I can say is I can say friends names. Then I want to choose the one I select, which is Jack, so that's 0. Now equals, let's say he's changed his name to Paul. Now if I print the friends names again, so you can see this first one here is the first print statement, the second one is the second, and the third one is the latest one. So you can see Jack is now changed to Paul because of this here. So if I wanted to change John's name instead, I could just change that to 1 and it would change John to Paul. I can also clear the list. So I could go friend's name, actually, so, no, let's just do new friends names. So I'm going to grab the old one, put it clear. Now print. So what it's doing here is we are creating a new variable called new friends names, and we are associating it with the old one, so this list here, and this is clearing it, so it's emptying everything out. So now when we print the new one, you can see it now shows none. Another way I could do this is I could just get rid of this variable here, so it's more or less the same, except I've not stored it in another variable. So all I've done is just call friends name up here, and I've decided that I want to clear it, and I've just printed the list again just to show you. So you can see here it's now empty. If I wanted to see how many values there were inside a list, we can also do that. I could put print, and I can do len for length, and then inside these parentheses I can put the name of the list. So friends names is now equals 0 because of this. Now if I comment that out, run it again, here we go. So we have 6. So we've got the original 1, 2, 3 and 4, and we added Jill and Marie 5 and 6, as you can see here. So all it's doing is it's printing the length of the friends names. Right, so I'm going to get rid of this print here just so we have a little bit of space. I'm going to keep the append, keep that, and I'm going to get rid of all of this here. Right, so now we have our updated list. So something else that we can do is we can, instead of appending at the end, we can insert names at any point inside the list. So I could say friends names dot insert. So rather than append, it's insert. Inside these parentheses, I can specify where I want it to be inserted. So I'm going to say position number 1 and the name I want to put in. So let's say Phil. So now if I print the list again, you can now see on the newest one, which is this one, I have Phil. So all this has done is it's grabbed hold of the list name, it's inserted at position 1, so we know Jack is 0 and John is 1, so it's now going to move John up 1 and place itself in between Jack and John, and we are putting the name Phil. So I could change this if I wanted to 0, it would do it at the beginning. I could change it to 3, and it would put it in the 3rd position, which is there. So something else I can do is, again, I'm going to get rid of this. You can sort a list. So you can tell Python that no matter what order these values are, you want it to display in alphabetical order. So what I can do is we can go friends names dot sort, open close parentheses, and then we can just print the new list. So this is the old one, which is the top one here. We've told Python that we want to get hold of the list name and we want to sort it. And we've printed the new one out, so it has listed it all in alphabetical order. We can, if we wanted to do it in reverse, you can just type inside the parentheses reverse equals true. And so rather than being in alphabetical order from the top, it will do it in reverse. So now start T and we end in B. Now, if we wanted to delete something, there's 3 types of delete. First one we have is pop. So what we can do, I will write it out and then I'll explain this in a second. So let's say we have had an argument with Jack and he is no longer our friend. So we can create a new variable here. I'll say not a friend. So within this variable, we will then call the list. So that's going to be friend's name, and we're going to add a dot and pop. Inside these parentheses, we are going to specify what position Jack is in the list, and he is in position 0. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to print the original list, and I'm also going to print the variable not a friend. So I'm just going to run that. So what's happened is we have used the pop method. So what it's done is, so pop allows you to remove something from a list, but it still stores it so that it can be used later on. So all we're doing is we are telling Python that we want to access the list friends names, and we want to pop out whatever is inside here. So at value 0 or position 0, we have the value of Jack. So it's taken Jack out of there and it has placed it inside this variable called not a friend. So we can do whatever we like with that variable. So it's no different to just putting Jack in here. So once we've done that, we've now printed the not a friend variable. And as you can see here, this is the original. So this is before we do the pop. And then these two is after we do the pop. So you can see we printed the original list. It's actually removed Jack out of that, and then it's placed it down here. Now, that's one method. The other method is just to purely delete someone. So we could say friend's name, so we're calling the list. We're going to add the dot and remove. And then inside here, we're going to specify the name that we want to take out. So let's say we want to remove Bill. Now, if I print the list again, Bill is no longer a friend. So all that's done is it's called into this list. We're telling Python that we want to remove something, and inside the parentheses we're telling Python what we want to remove. We're printing the list again so that we can see Bill is no longer in the list. So this is good. This is fine if you know what is in the list, but if you have a lot of values inside the list, you don't necessarily know, especially if you have user input as well. You don't actually know what they put in. So you can actually delete using another method, which is just delete. So it actually is del friend's name, so that's the list name. We're going to use the square brackets and we are going to specify the position. So we're going to say Tony, so 0, 1, that's position number 2. Now we're going to print the friend's name again. So now, so now we have told Python that we want to delete something. We don't know what the value is, we just know that it is at position number 2, which is Tony, so 0, 1, 2, and we've printed it. So you can see down here that Tony has been removed. So that is about all I'm going to go through with regards to lists. Lists are important for programming, and we will go through it a little bit more in the next lesson, which is going to be the for loops. So with the for loops, what that enables us to do is actually run through each one of these items and perform some sort of action as we run through each one of these. So we'll move on to loops, for loops, and I will show you, which will be a little bit easier than me trying to explain it. Before I actually forgot, before I go into for loops, I forgot to mention about tuples. So tuples are no different really to lists, except they are lists that cannot be changed. So as you saw, we could alter the list. We can delete stuff, we can change things. So a tuple is a list that doesn't allow it to be changed. So let's just write this. The only difference is, rather than using square brackets, we use parentheses. So get there in a minute. That's it. So you can see we have exactly the same still. So if I came down, let's say I wanted to change friends' names. Let's say I want to change Jack's name to Phil. So straight away we have an error, and it says type error, tuple object does not support item assignment. So there's not much to go. There's not much detail to go into with tuples at the moment, other than they can't be changed. So they're useful for certain bits of data, for example, date of births. That's something that's never going to change. Whereas things like age, you want that to be able to change because it's going to change every year. Names, addresses, all stuff like that, they need to be able to be changed. So ideally you want to use tuples for things that are never going to change, or things that are very unlikely to change. So for loops, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add a few more. So I'm actually going to add Jill and moving on to this list. So I'm going to write out a simple for loop code, and then I will explain it to you once it's run. So we're going to use for friend in friends names, print if my friend's name is friend dot title. Stop. Run. So this list is the same. Oh, hang on a minute. Let me change this back to a list rather than a tuple. So this is still a list. So what's happening here, let me make this a little bigger, is we are telling Python, so this is a loop, okay? So we're telling Python that we want Python to look in the list friends name here. So for every item that is inside here, we are going to run something. We're going to run whatever is underneath it. Now notice it is indented. So indentation is quite important in Python, and I'm assuming in most other coding languages. Now, if I ran it without an indent, we would get an error, and it would even tell you expected an indented block. So everything that is indented from here onwards will be ran along with this for loop. So that's something to bear in mind. If you didn't want that, so if I wanted to come down here and I wanted to print something else, I just wanted to print the list again, or let's just say, hello everyone, I could do that because it is now outside of this for loop. If I indented it, it would run it every single time the loop looped over. So what's going on is it's basically grabbing each value and it's keeping it inside its own little variable, which is inside this loop. So it's going through this list. It's going to start with the first one. It knows where to go because we have highlighted it here. We've said friends' names. It's coming back up here, looking through the list. It's grabbing the first name, Jack, and it's assigning it to this variable in here. So it's essentially replacing that like that. So that is why when we print it, we come down here and we print friend. So all we're doing is we are just grabbing the value of this variable here inside here. Don't get confused with this, because as we know, as we learned from the last lesson, this is just a format, so it just capitalizes the first letter. If it confuses you, we can get rid of it just so you can see. Exactly the same, it's just now they're not capitalized. So that's all it's doing. It's just associating this with this, which Python knows that Jack is friend. Once it's finished, it's then going, because it's a loop, it's then going to come back and do it all again. It's going to look up here, it's done Jack, it's going to go to the next name, which is John, do the same. It's going to associate the name John to the variable friend, and it's going to print it here, as you can see, and it's going to keep on until everything in the list has been shown. So you can see the last one here is Marie. So you can also do, for example, I can say for letter in, my name is Jason, print letter. So forget this for the minute, because we're not using the list. So this is just, I wanted to show you what else you can do. So all it's going to do is Python is going to start the loop. It's going to, because you've used the word in, so it knows that it needs to look in somewhere. So when this said, when this was the list name, it knew it had to go inside the list if it could find it, which it did. So now all it's doing is it knows that it's going to look inside whatever is next. So in this case, we put a string. So my name is Jason. So it's going to then associate the first character to the variable letter, and then it's going to print the letter, which is the M. It's going to loop over again, and then it's going to assign the next letter, so Y, to the variable letter, print it again, and so on until we have reached the end, which is the N. What we can also do is you can tell Python to run a loop a certain amount of times. Basically, if you didn't want it to run through a list, you could tell Python that you wanted to say for number in range, and inside these parentheses you are going to specify the range. So I'm going to say from number 1 to number 10. So mustn't forget the colon and the indentation. So it's then going to print the number. So now I have done that. So notice how I have specified up to 10. It doesn't include 10. So all you need to do is just put 11 and it will include 10 down here. So all it's doing is it's going inside a range that we've specified. So it's going to go in the range between 1 and 10. Going to take the number, so to take the number 1, it's going to start at 1. It's going to assign it to the variable number. Then when we print number, it's then going to print number 1, and it's going to do it all again until it's reached the end. So the last number that we've specified, which is 11, so therefore it's going to stop at 11, so the last number will be 10. So we can also add something else. We can add a comma, and then we can put a number in here. And I'm going to put number 2, and let's see if you can see what it does. So it's doing exactly the same, except it's just going to increase by 2. So it's going to step up by 2. So it's going to do number 1, assign that to here. It's going to go up 2, which will be then number 3. It's going to go up another 2, 5. So if I wanted to, I could put that as number 3, and it would step up 3, 4, and so on and so on. What I can also do is I can also run through the list again in friends names, but this time I can use a splice. So let's say that, and 3, and print friend. So as you can see at the top here, we have all the names up here, but all we are doing is we are telling Python that we just want to grab the first 3 and print that. And as soon as it's reached the third one, it's then going to stop. So that is about all I'm going to go into with for loops. For loops, now we've covered the basics. We'll learn more as we go and actually start making some more programs in the future. So I'm now going to go into if statements. So an if statement is something that we do in real life or in our normal lives. So we do it every day. We don't even think about it. So an if statement is we do something based on if something else is true or if it's false. So for example, you could wake up in the morning and you'll look outside and you'll think, if it's raining, then I'm going to take my umbrella. So that is an if statement. So if it's raining, I'll take my umbrella. If it's not raining, I'm not going to take my umbrella. That's very similar to how we're going to code as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable here. I'm going to call the variable name and I'm going to put the name John inside. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to put if name equals John. So what we're doing here, well, first of all, actually, notice how I put these. So I put two equal signs. Now, if I were to put 1, now we know that Python uses 1 to assign a variable. So as you can see here, so we've used a single one. If I use this, it's going to get confused because it's going to try and associate John to a variable called name again, but it can't because we are using it inside an if statement. So whenever you want to use the equal, we use 2. Now what we're doing is we are telling Python that if the name, so if this variable here equals John, then do something. We haven't told it what, but we told it to do something. So all I'm going to do is just tell it to print. So notice how it's indented. So it's the same as the loops. We need it to be indented so that Python knows that anything that is underneath but indented is part of this if statement, if command, if process. So I'm going to say if, I'm going to put name, name, I'm going to use my title, is on the list. So if I run that, so you can see it says John is on the list. So all it's doing is Python is checking to see if the value John is held within this variable here. If it is, it's going to print the name, which is up here. So it's grabbing this variable here, it's going to put the name and it's going to say is on the list. If I change it, so if I say Jack, it's not going to run anything. And that is because this is no longer equal. So name is no longer equal to John because we've changed it to Jack. So what I can do is rather than having it blank, I can put an else as well. So you can see here, so we have an if and an else. So this is just like your real life example. So if the sun is out, so this is saying if the sun is out. So what I could say is if, forget this for the minute, I could say if the sun is, actually I will do it. So sun equals out. So if the sun is out, oh hang on, it was the other way around, wasn't it? Sorry, if, let's just do a weather. Let's call that weather. Raining. Weather. change this to capital so it's a bit easier to read. Now, so this is a coded version of my description earlier about real life. So in your head, you could think, well, if it's raining today, I'm going to bring my umbrella. If it's not, then I'm not going to bring my umbrella. So this is all we've done here. So all we've done is we have just predicted the weather here. So we've just said that the weather is raining. So all we're doing is we're saying if the weather is equal to raining, so in our head, that is us going, if it's raining today, then you're printing, I'm going to bring my umbrella. Else if, which is the same as us saying, but if it's not raining today, then I'm not going to bring my umbrella. So if I were to change this to sun, let's say the weather is now sunny. It's now going to change and do the else part, and it's going to say, I'm not going to bring my umbrella. So if statements are very powerful, you can do quite a lot. So you're actually then enabling your program to carry out different tasks based on the input that a user can give or based on a certain condition. So what we can do is something else is another example is let's say we put age is equal to 15. So what I can say is if age is greater than or equal to 18, print you are able to go to a pub and drink, although you aren't at the moment because it's a lockdown. But in the UK you can drink at 18. I know other countries are different. And then here I'm going to put else, print you will need to wait until you reach the age of 18. So similar to the last one, so we're telling Python that if the age, so if this variable is 18 or above, so this is the greater than symbol and this is the equal to, so if they're 18 or over, print this, you are able to go to the pub. If they're not, so in other words, if they are under the age of 18, show this, you will need to wait until you reach the age of 18. So I've run that and you can see it says you will need to wait until you reach the age of 18. If I change this to 18, it says you are able to go to the pub and drink. If I change this to 58, it also says the same because it is over the age of 18. So just to make it a little bit more complicated, let's change this to something that a user can actually type in. So I've got a variable called age and I'm going to ask how old they are. So I need the int because it's going to be an integer, so it's going to be a number. Input, how old are you? So hopefully this should be familiar from the last one. So it's just an input, you're asking how old they are, but it's going to be a number. So we're just going to straight away define it as an integer. Otherwise Python will treat it as a string. We're also going to ask another question. Different countries have different legal ages to drink. So we're going to say legal age. We're going to do an int again, input. We're going to ask them, what is the legal drinking age in your country? We're going to assume that they're honest and they're not going to lie. So we have those two questions. So now what we can say is we can say if the age is greater than or equal to the legal age that they have typed in, then print you are able to go to a pub and drink. Else, print I'm not putting that yet. Just say you are too young. Let's just say that for the time being. You are too young. So here it's going to ask, how old are you? So I'm going to say I am 19. What is the legal drinking age in your country? Let's say 18. It says here, you are able to go to the pub and drink. If I run it again, I'm going to put I am 12 and it is 18. You are too young. I can do it again and I can say 74 and let's say 21 is a legal age. You're able to go. Now I could make it look a little bit nicer. Because at the moment, if I say 10, 18, it just says you are too young. So what I could do is I could change this else print to my F string. You will need to wait until you reach the age of, and in here I can grab the variable that holds the legal age that they typed in, just so it makes the code look a little bit better. So if I were now to say 10, and let's say they live in America and I believe the age is 21, then it will say here you will need to wait until you reach the age of 21. If I put the age 17 and I live in the UK and it's 18 the age, then it says here you'll need to wait until you reach the age of 18. So all we're doing here is we are just associating their age, or sorry, not associating, assigning their age to the age variable, and we are assigning their legal drinking age in their country to this variable here. We are telling Python to check. So if their age is greater than or equal to the age that they can legally drink in their country, then do this. If not, then run this. So what we can also do is we can go back to our list, which I deleted. So I'm just going to write it out again. Friends' names. John, let's say, I can't remember who I had in there. Jack, Bill, Jill, Marie, and let's say Fred. We've got our list there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a question. So I'm going to say user friend. And here I'm going to have an input. So it's a question. I'm going to say check if your check if you are in my friends list. What is your name? So all I want to do is I want to create something that will check to see if there is a particular user that is one of my friends. So if their name is inside this list here. So we've got a list, we've got our question. So the answer will be stored in the variable called user friend. So now I need to create an if, because what we're saying is we are saying if this name here that they input is in this list here, we want Python to do something, and in this case we are going to tell them that they are in the list. So I'm just going to say if user friend in friends names print you are in my list. And again, if they're not, we're going to say you are not my friend, sad times. So we're going to run this. So it says check if you're in my friends list. What is your name? I'm going to just put a space there, do it again. I'm going to say Marie. Now we know that Marie is in that list, and then it comes up with you are in my list because it's grabbing hold of the content, so what's inside user friend, which was Marie, and it's going to check. So it's going to say if Marie is inside the list friend's name, do this. Let's run it again and let's put a name that is not inside. So we are going to put Paul. Paul is not in the list, so it's checked to see if Paul's in the list. It's not. It's then going to run the else, and it's going to say you are not in my you are not my friend, sad times. So now what I'm going to do is it's going to make a little program. We're going to pretend that a family are going to a theme park, and they have different prices depending on the age of the people or the children. So first of all, we're going to ask how old they are. So again, we're going to have our input. What is your name? So now we're going to start the if. So if the age that they type in is less than 2. Print. There is no entrance fee for children under the age of 2. So now, because there's different options, so what we're going to have is we're going to have a certain price for under 2s, we're going to have a price for under 16s, a price for under 18s, and then a price for anyone over the age of 18. So everything that we've dealt with before has just been if and else if, so there's 2 options. This one we are going to use, well, there's technically 3 different options. Sorry, 4 different options. So in this case, we can use something that is essentially an else if. Else if is actually printed as elif. So that says age is less than or equal to 16. Print. If your child is between the age of 2 and 16 years old, the price is £10. I'll go through all this in a second again, talk you through it, but we're going to have another else if, and we're going to check the age. We're going to say we want them to be less than 18, so if they're less than 18, run this, print. If your child is between the age of 16 and 18, the price is £12. Now, we want, I forgot double quotes here, we want anyone over the age of 18 is just going to be the same price. So we're just now going to use the else. So else. So we have mentioned, we've covered everyone under the age of 2, everyone between 2 and 16, everyone between 16 and 18. So the only people that are left are the people that are over the age of 18, which is going to be covered here. Adult tickets are £15. Okay, so let's run this. Now, what I put? What is your name? What is your age? I'm going to say we have a 1-year-old. There's no entrance fee for children under the age of 2. Brilliant. So now I'm going to say, let's say I am 6 years old. Your child is aged between 2 and 16, which we are, so we put 6. Price is £10, so that's good, that works. I'm going to say 17 years old. If your child is between the age of 16 and 18, which we are, because we put 17, the price is £12, that works. I'm going to put 53. Adult tickets are 53. Excellent, because the age 53 is considered an else because it is not any of these. So this first bit should be quite simple. The first if part and the variable. So all we've done is we've asked them how old they are. We've stored it in this variable called age. Now we're saying if the age is less than, so this sign means less than. So if they are less than 2, which is just a number that we have created, you could put 3, 4, 10, 12, whatever you like there. So if they are less than 12, we need to do something. So we need to do that. So when we use if and else if, Python will run through each line until it finds a true statement. So here we've told, so the first example we did, we told Python we were 1, so we were a year old. So Python came to here, it checked if the age is less than 1, it was. So now it found that it was less than 1, it didn't need to bother carrying on with the rest of it. So it just stopped, it just printed this here, and then it stopped because it's already true, it's found this bit here. When we did it after and we put the age of 6, Python came down to here, it checked if the age that we inputted was less than 2. It wasn't because we put 6. So that's false. So now it's moved down to the next one. Else if the age is less than or equal to, so remember with the less than symbol, and this one is the equal to symbol 16, which we put 6, so it was. So then it ran this line here, and it did the same for the next one. So the next one, I can't remember now, 17. It checked the if, that was wrong. It checked this, the first else if, that was also wrong. It checked this one. This was right because we put 17, so this was less than 18. So then it ran this code. And then obviously the 53, it's checked the first one, the second one, the third one. None of them are true. So the only option it's got is to print the else if. So that's quite simple. Hopefully you understand that. Now we will move on to the next bit, which is ifs. Now we don't need to use else if, and we don't technically need to use else. So what we can do is, I'm going to start again just because it's easier. So I'm going to keep the age variable at the top here. So if the age is less than 2, print you are a baby. Then we're going to use another if. The age is greater than or equal to 2. We're also going to say and the age is less than or equal to the age of 12. Print you are a child. We're going to use another if. If the age is greater than 13 and age is less than or equal to 19, then I want you to print what am I printing? Print you are a teenager. And then the last one can be age. If age is greater than 20, we are just going to say you are just old. So we could have done this as we did before with the else if, but I wanted to show you another way of doing this, and also I wanted to introduce you to the and. Now, what this does is it checks. So let's say if I put just the age of 1, and we know the outcome is going to be you are a baby. Now, if I put anything that is aged before and including 2, sorry, after and including 2, and before and including 12, it's going to run this command here. So I can put 11, and it's going to say you are a 12. Sorry, you are a child. So this is no different to what we did before, except we are just introducing a limit, which we didn't really need to. But again, I just wanted to show you a different way of doing it. So now on the next one, it's going to check to see if this variable here is greater than the age of 13 and less than or equal to 19. Then here, anyone over the age of 20, then you are just old. So something else I wanted to show you as well is, rather than using and, we are going to use or. So let's change this. So let's get rid of this. So if we say something simple, so this isn't going to be very practical, but it will just get the point across. So I'm going to say if age is equal to 18 or age is equal to 20, print you are either 18 or 20 years old. Else, print you are neither 18 nor 20. Okay, so what this is going to do is we're going to put our name in. We're going to age. We're going to put 15. So it says you are neither 18 nor 20 because we are not. So we're telling Python to check if the age that we put in is the same as the value of 18 or the value of 20. So it needs to be, so the OR statement is telling Python it needs to be one or the other. It has to be one or the other. So if I run it again, and I said 18, it will print you are either 18 or you are 20. If I run it again and I put 20, it will have the same result. So we're going to have a little go now at nested ifs. So ifs inside ifs. So I'm going to keep the age variable. I'm going to say if the age that they put in is greater than or equal to the age of 18, I want it to ask a question. I want Python to ask what country they come from. So I'm going to create a variable called country, and I'm going to assign it an input of do you live in the UK? Simple yes or no. So they're going to put their age in. The next question is, do you live in the UK? Because I know that in the UK you need to be 18 or above to drink. Now what I'm going to do is, keeping the indented value, or keeping the indent here, I'm going to create another if. So I'm going to say if the country that they have typed in is equal to yes, print you are legal to drink in the UK. Now I'm going to also say if country equals no, print you are not allowed to drink in the UK. So now I'm going to finish this off with an else at the bottom. So this else, because it's not indented, it is going to be the second option to this if statement here. So if they're not 18 or above, so if they're under 18, then you need to say you cannot drink. I'm going to guess in all countries. I'm just going to say in most countries, just in case. You cannot drink in most countries. So let's print that. So it'll say, what is your age? So first of all, I'm just going to put an under 18. You cannot drink in most countries. Brilliant. So now I'm going to say I am 21. So now it will say, do you live in the UK? Yes or no? I'm going to put yes. You are legal to drink in the UK. If I run it again, age is 27, let's say. Do you live in the UK? Yes or no? I'm going to put no. You are not allowed to drink in the UK. So you are able to show different responses based on what the user puts in. So I'm going to make it a little bit nicer. So I'm going to put space here. Now bear in mind, I am quite funny about capitalization. So if I say 21, I would very rarely write yes or no. I would put yes with a capital Y or no with a capital N. So in order for this code to work, they have to match this. So they have to put it exactly as a capital Y or a capital no. If I just put a small one, the code just ends because it's not actually what I typed in. So a lot of people would probably just put a yes with a small or lowercase y. So to cover ourselves for that, we could just say lower and lower. So let's just make sure this works, and then I'll explain what I've done. So let's say 24, and I'm going to put yes in small letters. Oh, hang on, I must have done something wrong. Oh yeah, I have. $24 and yes, it's fine. So even if I were to do it properly, 32 and put capital Y, it would still run. If I were to run it again and put my age of 84 and put it all in capitals, let's put no this time, it would still run. So what this is doing is we are grabbing hold of their country. So this first bit should hopefully be quite self-explanatory by now. So down here, we are just saying that if their age is equal to or over 18, I want you to ask them a question. I want you to ask them if they live in the UK, yes or no. So that value, so if I type in yes, like that, or yes, or yes, or no, or no, or no. So any of these options, it's going to store that exactly how the user typed it in this variable called country. So if they put all capital yeses, it's going to replace that with yes, like that. If they put lower case, it's going to be yes, like that. I can't remember what it was, country. So it's going to store it there. So it's then going to move down to here and it's going to check. It's going to say if the country, but before it gets actually called out, it's going to lower the case. So it doesn't matter if they put capital yes here, it's just going to bring it down to lowercase. It's going to force it to go down to lowercase. So I'm going to change this to lowercase. So if that matches this, which it will do, assuming they actually type the word yes, it's going to match it because we forced it to go into a lowercase. Then it's going to run this, and exactly the same for here. It's going to force the no into a lowercase, which will match that, and it will run this. So another little thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create another list of my friends again, which I have deleted, and I'm going to ask the user if they would like to see my friends list. If they say yes, then it's going to display all the names on the list. If they say no, then it's not going to. So I'm just going to put friends names here, create my list. Let's say John, Bill, Jack, Marie, Jill, Tony, and Jason. So I have my list of friends here. I'm going to ask them a question. I'm going to say input. Would you like to see my friends list? Yes or no? I'm going to store that inside a variable called user wants to see. So whatever they type into here, it's just going to be stored in this variable called user wants to see. So let's move that up. Now I'm going to say if the user wants to see, now I'm going to force this to be lowercase because of what I explained earlier, equals the word yes, then I want you to do something. Now what I want you to do is print following. So we're going to have a little new line. Oh, wait a minute. New line, and I'm going to say my friends are, and I'm going to have a new line. So now what this is going to do is I'm going to introduce the for into the if statement. So it's going to have a for loop. So now, so they've typed in yes, so they want to see the list. So I'm going to use the for friend in friends names, print friend. I'll explain what I'm doing in a minute. Title. So I'm then just going to finish it off with an else. Print you said no with a sad face. Okay, so before I explain, I'm just going to make sure this runs. So would you like to see my friends? Yes or no? Yes. It lists all my friends. Do you want to see my friends? Yes or no? No. And it says you said no. So we have our list of friends. We have the question, and the question is being stored in this variable here. So we are telling Python, or we're asking Python, if the user wants to see. So if this variable equals yes, you're going to print the following. So you're going to print my friends are. Now we're also going to tell Python that I want you to start a loop. So I want you to go into this list here, and I want you to grab the first name that you can see, which is John, and I want you to assign it to this variable called friend, and I want you to print the name friend, which in this case would be John, and I'll just put the title so that it shows it as a capitalized J, and then it's going to stop. And it's going to stop, so it's done the first one. It's now then going to come back, loop back over. It's going to go back into the friend's name. It's going to grab the name Bill, assign it to friend, going to print friend, do it again, come back into this list, find Jack, assign that to friend, print so on and so on until it has done the last one. When it's done the last one, it's then going to stop, and that is the end of the program. If they select no, it's just going to come to here. It's going to say if the user wants to see equals yes, which it hasn't because we typed in no. So it's going to straight away go, all right, okay, but I don't want to see the list. So the only other option I have is to run this here, which is print you said no. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's all I'm going to talk about with regards to if statements. Again, we'll use this quite a lot in the future, so we'll pick up more things as we go and we'll learn more things as we go. So the last thing that we are going to do is we are going to create our own password generator. But first of all, I forgot, we are going to briefly have a talk about modules. So a module is essentially a Python code or program that is external to this part of the code that you see here. So what that will enable us to do is we can import that module, and we can tap into sections and parts of that module and actually bring it into the code that we're writing and use it. So and we're going to explain it a little bit because we are going to use the random module for our password generator. So I'm going to get rid of all of this. Now, if I come to here and I'm going to create a new Python file. So, new Python file, I'm going to call this pet. So I have my main file here and I've got my pet file here. So all I'm going to do is create two variables. I'm going to say pet name. Actually, no, it's a bit longer. I'm going to say pet sentence. And I'm going to say my pet is a dog and she is called Tiny. I'm going to create just another variable just for the sake of it. So I'm going to say pet, I don't know, this doesn't really have to be relevant because it's an example. So pets, friends. My pet has a friend. She's a cat called Billy. So we have something very simple, but you can think of this as a module. You can think of this pet Python file as a module. So when we import the random module in the challenge, obviously it's a lot more complex than this, but you can just think of it as its own Python file. So I'm going to come back to my main file. Now imagine I want to call this. So I want this string here, this sentence, to be displayed on my main file here. What I need to do is at the top I need to import it. So I need to import pet. So I need to tell Python that at some point in my code I'm going to be using something out of the module, out of the file pet. Now the reason it's in grey is because I've not actually used it yet. So it's written here, it's just I haven't called that module yet. So now I can come down here and I can say a simple thing of print pet dot pet. So you can see it's even finishing, it's even trying to finish, or it's suggesting the variables that I have placed in pet. If I didn't have this import and I just started to write pet, it's not going to try and predict it because it doesn't know this file exists. But because we've imported it, we've told Python to look in here, it now knows it exists. So I'm going to say pet sentence. If I print this, it says it will print out my pet is a dog and she's called Tiny, which is what we have here. My pet is a dog and she's called Tiny. So what this is doing is it's importing the module. So it's just telling Python about this module here. The print is print, that's self-explanatory. We are telling Python that we want to grab hold, we want to grab hold of this module here, pet, and inside that module, we want it to find this here. We want it to find, in this case, it's a variable. We want it to find this. So we can use this to call functions and classes, but for this, we are just using it, nice and simple, to call a variable. So that's all it's doing. If I wanted it to call the pet's friends instead, I would tell Python I want to call something from file pet, which we've imported. I'm going to use my dot, and I'm going to say I want it to bring out the pet's friends. So now it says my pet has a friend. She is a cat called Billy, which is this one. So that is a very, very basic, simple explanation into modules, but it's good enough for us to do our challenge. Right, so this is the program. Thought it would be relevant to the channel, seeing as it's ideally about ethical hacking. So I've got a nice little display, which is a key and a padlock. And underneath here, it says, welcome to our secure password generator. Please answer all the questions, or all questions. So the first question is, how many letters would you like? So I'm going to say I want 7 letters. Enter. It will then say, how many numbers would you like? So I'm going to say 3 numbers. And how many special characters would you like? I'm going to go with 4. I push enter. It will then generate a random password. And it will say your new secure password is. So we can say we wanted 3 numbers. So it's done 1, 2, and 3 numbers. 7 characters. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not include 5, 6, and 7, and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 special characters. So it's all there. You can see we've got a mixture of lower and uppercase numbers, letters as well. So now we will move on to actually coding this, and I will talk you through it. Right. So I have already included this bit in. I wrote it for the program. I'm not going to sit here and write it all out on film because it will take forever. So all this is lists. It's one list here with all the potential letters, upper and lowercase, that can be chosen. This is a list of numbers and a list of the special characters that we want to include. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to import a module called random, because it should be quite straightforward, or you know, apply a bit of common sense. We want to generate a random password. So we are going to, if you didn't know about the module random, you can look up online, and with a bit of research, you can find out that there is actually a module called random that will help you randomize options and letters, numbers, and stuff like that. So we're going to call import random. Now it's going to grey out because we've included it, but we've not actually called it yet. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to, in the actual program I showed you, you had all the intro wording, like welcome to the password generator in the picture. I'm not going to show you that until the end. I just want to get the code explained first so it actually functions. So the first thing we want to do is we want to ask the user 3 questions. That was how many letters, numbers, and special characters. So this should be quite easy for you to do. We're going to just call the variable number of letters, let's say. We want it to be an integer because they're all going to be integers because they are going to type in an amount. How many letters would you like? I'm going to make another one. So I'm going to say numbers. Another integer input. How many numbers would you like? Space up here. Number of special characters. Another integer. How many special characters would you like? Okay, so far it should be quite straightforward. So now we need Python to get hold of, let's just work with one. So we're going to work with the numbers at the moment. I'm going to comment this out just so that we know that all we're going to deal with is the numbers on the letters. Sorry, I'm going to comment this out as well. So it's just letters. Options are letters. The input that they're going to put in is the amount of letters they would like. So we need Python to search through this selection of letters here and randomly choose a certain amount of letters depending on how many the user would like. So first of all, we need somewhere to store that. So when the user types in an example, let's say the user wants 5 random letters. So when the user types in 5, pushes enter, we want Python to grab 5 of these here, and we need it stored somewhere. So we are going to create a list. You could store it in a variable if you want, but in order to be able to randomize the password or to shuffle the password at the end, it needs to be in a list. So we're going to put my password. So we're going to create a new variable list, and that is it. So it's empty at the moment because we have nothing to put in there, but we have created it. So Python will be able to put the contents, the 5 letters that it randomly chooses, it will be able to put it somewhere in here. Now we're going to need to use a for loop. So what we're going to say is I'm going to say for letter in a range. So the range is going to be between 1 and the number that they have put in here. So it would be the same as us saying 5. In actual fact, it's not, because remember when we spoke about ranges before, this here will only display 1 to 4. So we actually need to put it to 6. So what that will do is that will randomly go through 5 letters in here. Now, we can't predict that it's going to be 5 that they type in. So we're going to change that 6 to the variable here. Now, going back to what we just said, where we couldn't put 5 because it would only go through 1 to 4, it's the same here. So if I put 5, if you imagine this here gets replaced with 5, it's only going to still go through 1 to 4. So to go around that, we can just put +1 here. So if they put 5, because we've added a +1, that is the same as saying 6, which is what we have covered before. So we want it to do something. Okay, so it's going to just work through numbers. So example is 5 here. It's going to work through 1 to 5. At the moment, it doesn't really know where to work through or what to do. It just knows it needs to loop through 1 to 5. So now we are going to tell Python we want a random. So this is where we are calling the module, the random. So we're calling that random file. And inside that file, it has different options or different abilities. So one of the abilities is choice, which makes the random module choose. We're going to say choice, and we want it to choose something. We need to tell Python where to choose, what options it has. So in these parentheses, we're going to put the list name, option letters. So now I'm going to tell Python that it is now chosen to randomly choose 5 letters because it's being called here, and from the list option letters. So now what I want to do is store that in here. So once it's grabbed hold of them, it needs somewhere to store it. So I want it to add it into my password. So what we can do is we can say my password, and we can say plus equals. So that plus equals will tell Python that it wants to add into here. Now let's print my password. So it says here, how many letters would you like? I'm going to say 5 because that is our example. So you can see it's not going to do the rest of it because we've commented it all out. So we're working on is the numbers. So you can see we've selected 5 and Python has randomly chosen 5 characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I were to do it again and do another 5, it would be completely different from the last one. Do it again, completely different. So that's all it's doing. It is just running through. So it's running through the range. It's running through. It's looping between 1 and 5. So it's looping 5 times. It's each time it loops, it's going to grab a random letter from up here, and it's going to add it onto the password list. So I'm now going to do the numbers. So this should hopefully be quite easy now we've done letters. I'm going to use this example and say we want 3 numbers. So all we need to do is the same. For number. So these can be letter here, number here, can be anything you want. I can put that as the letter. And it would still run. So let me just show you. How many lists would you like? 5. And it still runs exactly the same. For number, I'm just choosing number because it's relevant. So number in exactly the same range. 1, 2. But this time we want it to get hold of the variable or the selection in the input here. So number underscore numbers. Or underscore numbers. So it's that one. Remember we need to do the +1. We are going to tell Python to randomly choose 5 options because that sorry, not 5, it's 3 options, sorry, as I've said in the example here. So randomly choose 3 options from the option numbers list, which we can see up the top here. Now once it's done that, I want it to add it onto the my password list. So now let's run this and see what happens. How many letters would you like? We're going to say 5. How many numbers would you like? I'm going to say 3. So now we have our 5 letters and our 3 numbers. Now the issue that we have at the moment is that it's always going to be in that predictable order. It's always going to be, so if we say 5 and 3, it's always going to have the 5 numbers first and 3 letters last. Even if I change this and said 2 letters and 6 numbers, letters are always going to be first because that is the order that we have coded it, and the numbers are going to be at the end. But we can sort that out a bit later on. So we're going to do the same with special characters. I'm going to do this a bit quicker because we've covered it twice now. So for special in range 1, number special, num special +1, my password plus equal to random choice option. I need to uncomment this, the special characters special. So we're going to run it again. So now we're going to be asked for the number of letters 5, numbers 3, and let's say special characters, we want 4 special characters. 4 special characters. So here we are, we have our predictable order. So we have our 5 letters here, our 3 numbers, and then we have our 4 random special characters. If I ran it again, did 6, 3, 9, it's always going to choose different options, but it's still going to be in the same order. Now, what I can do is I can get rid of this print for the time being. And the random module has a shuffle option. So all that does is it shuffles the contents of the list that you give it, which is why it had to be in a list. I don't believe you can do it as a string. It has to be a list. So what we're going to do is we're going to call the random module, and we're going to tell the random module that we want to use its shuffle feature. So shuffle, and then we need to tell it the list, or what list we want to shuffle. So we want to shuffle the contents of my password. So now if I print my password, we are going to say the same: 5 letters, 3 numbers, and 4 special characters. So now you can see it shuffles it. So it does exactly the same as it did before, except it shuffles. So now I'm going to add the print my password again. And just to show you what I mean. So this first password here, both passwords are exactly the same. The only difference is this first one is before we shuffle it. So you can see I've printed my password before the random shuffle, and I've also printed my password after the random shuffle. So if you sat here and went through this password, you will see that they have all the same characters, except this one is in the predictable order that we've been working with. So 5 letters, 3 numbers, and 4 special characters. And then once it shuffles, all it does is just shuffle this around. So it is now a completely random password in a completely random order. Now the only issue is it's in a list, because we've had to put it in a list. So we now need to convert it into a string. Now the way we can do that is we are now going to get rid of these prints again. I'm going to move this up. Is we will use our for loop, which will take each value. So each one of these, it will take it out of the list and it will add it to a new variable. So we'll create a new variable called shuffled pass, and we are going to keep that as an empty variable. Now notice we did the same up here, except because we use square brackets, we told Python that this was an empty list. Because we're using strings, we are telling Python that this is now an empty string variable. Empty list variable, empty string variable. So what we want to do is we want to swap everything out of a list and place it inside this variable string here. So it shows it in a nice normal format. It still be random, still be shuffled, but it won't be in this format. It will just look normal. So to do that, we can use the for loop. So the for loop, remember, will be able to run through every single value inside the list, and we can actually add it into this string variable here, which will then print it out as a normal looking format. So what we'll do is we'll say for shuffle in my password. Then we want the shuffled password to show shuffle. Okay, so I'll explain again in a second. I'm just going to print this out. So I'm now going to officially have my nice finish. Your new secure password is shuffled pass. So let's just double check this. So how many letters would you like? 5, 3 numbers, and 4 special characters. Here we go. You have your new secure password is, I'm going to put that there just so it's a bit easier to see. 5, 3, 4. Your new secure password is that. If I run it again, it will be different again. 6, 2, and 8. And we have that. So this last little bit I'll go through. So what we are saying is we're telling Python to run through this list. So let's get rid of this for the minute. So it's going to run through this list here. And imagine, forget the shuffle bit for the minute. Imagine we have just randomly chosen some letters and numbers and special characters. So I'm just going to put this in here just to make it visually a bit easier. So imagine that's the password it's come up with. Obviously it'd be a bit longer, but I'm not going to sit here and do all that. So just imagine that that is the password it's come up with. So it's in that format, and we want it to essentially show in here as F4T at. That's what we want it to look like. So what it's going to do is it's going to run. Look, it's going to see it's a for loop. It's going to go into the my password list. It's going to grab the first letter, and it's going to store it in the shuffle here. So it's now stored in shuffle. So I'm going to move down, and it's going to see that we want to add this shuffle into this variable here. So now, once it's completed this loop, it's going to basically put the F in there. Python knows, or Python's going to come back up, it's going to check if there's anything else that it needs to do. So it's going to see, oh, there's another value. So it's going to grab the 4, going to keep it in the shuffle. Then this command down here, this line here, is going to add this shuffle. So the value of this shuffle, which in this case is 4, it's going to add it onto this string. So it's going to do that. And it's going to work its way onto the T and then the at and however many characters it has until it gets to the last one. Then it knows it's finished. And all this list here has been added into here. So it's now a string. And that is it. So this will now generate a password based on how many letters, numbers, and special characters that you want. Now, I'm going to go down to the original one that I made so that I can show you this. Okay, so this bit here is easy to make. It's just print statements. Where is it? It's here. So it's just print, and then I've just done this. Now this bit is called an ASCII, and we've done a print with 3 single quotes at the start, 3 single quotes at the bottom, and this will tell Python that I can have multiple lines inside these 3 quotes. It has to be 3 single quotes. It can't be 3 double quotes or 2 single quotes. It's 3 single quotes. This I found online. I didn't sit there and write that. You can just find that by going on Google and just typing in ASCII art or anything like that, and you'll see art that people has made. They just made it out of keyboard characters. So you can see this is X's, this is M's, U's, and that's it in this case. So that's all that is, and it's just something a little bit different. Thought it made it look a little bit nicer. So that is it. Now this is quite simple, but it's complicated for someone who's just learning. And I now looking at this, I find it easy, and I find it easy to write this without any help, without looking up anything. When I first started, even though I understood the input, I understood the lists, I understood how the for loops worked, I understood to a degree the shuffle. I didn't have much experience with it, but I understood shuffle, I understood the range and the random. I just couldn't use it all together. I knew what each individual bit did, but to actually sit down from scratch and write something out using everything I knew was just beyond me, and it made me a bit disheartened because I just couldn't even picture where to start. This code here I wrote completely off my own back. There was a few little bits I looked up just because when I learnt these here, the for loops and all that, it was probably a few weeks ago, and everything is still new to me, so it hadn't actually embedded into my head. So don't feel put off if you understand what each bit does, but you just wouldn't even be able to start writing something like this, because that's the whole point in my channel, and that's the whole point in me doing these challenges. I know what it's like to be at a beginner level and feel like that, because I feel like that now, and I felt like that a week ago, whereas someone who's been doing it for 10 years doesn't remember what that feels like. They probably don't even have that problem. So just carry on. If you can, try and do the challenges with me. I always show the challenge working. I never show the code first. I always show the challenge working, feel free to try it. So try it yourself, and then then we can go through it. Something like this. The other thing you've got to remember is there are loads of different ways to code the same thing. So if you manage to make your own password generator and it looks nothing like this, at the moment, if it works, that's fine. It doesn't matter. There's lots of different ways. Coders will write things different ways, which is why comments are important to have, because if you give your code to another developer, they might look at it and go, actually, that doesn't really make much sense the way they've done that. So they can read your comments. It's just like teachers, instructors will always have a different way to teach or instruct the same thing. As long as they get the same results and it's safe and it works, it doesn't really matter. And in a way that can help people learning, because a certain way that one instructor will teach, you might not understand, but you go to another teacher and they'll explain exactly the same thing, but because they've worded it differently or shown you differently, it will make more sense. So that's another good thing. You go online and there's loads and loads and loads of YouTube videos about learning Python or ethical hacking or anything like that. It doesn't necessarily mean that there are too many channels doing this. In a way, it's good because, like I said, one person who's learning a particular subject can get the opinion of hundreds of different experts out there and teachers out there. And they might look at one and go, I don't understand what he's just said. But then they'll go on another one and they'll say, yeah, that made complete sense because of the way that they explained it. So I will hopefully have another video out tomorrow. Now, my next video is either going to be another Python video, or it's going to be a video about unboxing and setting up a Pornogotchi that I got, which basically captures WPA2 handshakes. So I'll have to see how I feel tomorrow as to which video I have put up. But hopefully this video has helped some of you or someone. And if it has helped you, then please subscribe and like the video. If you click subscribe, then you'll get notified when I create a new video. So thank you for watching.